most harm comes from the experts rather than from fools like us. Lewis says elsewhere, there's two reasons for preferring a democracy, the bad one and the good one. The bad one is everybody is so wise and good that you ought to give them as much power as possible. The other is everybody is so stupid and bad that you ought not to give anybody much power at all. It comes to the same thing, democracy, but the foundations for it are opposite. And Lewis, being not only a congenital pessimist, but also a Christian who believes in original sin, prefers the realistic basis for democracy. We're so bad, we better not put anybody up there on the throne. In this essay, Lewis uses a very effective reductio ad absurdum argument for the bad psychological effects of egalitarianism in education. There's going to be all sorts of obvious bad results, including envy and competition among the students. In the very effort to enforce egalitarianism, you produce exactly the opposite. And he knows that from the classroom. Well, let's expand this point beyond education to everything in the public arena, and then let's apply it to politics. I think the radical egalitarian left either faces this issue and denies it, namely the need for aristocracy, or ignores it, or at best admits it only reluctantly. Because the left tends to socialism and egalitarianism in as many places as possible. And the need for some sort of aristocracy, certainly in education, is empirically verifiable. It's not an ideological point. In fact, in every area of human life, aristocracy is a necessity for survival. The obvious analogy here is in biology. The survival of the fittest, not the survival of the equal. Anything in nature survives if it is superior, and it does not survive if it is inferior. That's a basic law of nature, because everything in nature is made of matter, and matter is essentially competitive. Here are two big animals. One is a little bigger than the other. They're going to fight. Which one's going to win? The biggest one. Or here are two animals competing for a piece of food, a big one and a little one. Which one's going to win? The bigger one, or the faster one, or the smarter one. But two particles of matter cannot occupy the same space at the same time. And if they're in competition, it's either or. Either I'm here or you're here. The fundamental law of nature is the principle for the old grade B Western. This town ain't big enough for both me and you, partner, and one of us is going to leave, and it ain't me, so goodbye. Now, the law of spirit is exactly the opposite. Materially, all particles of matter are in competition. If I give you some of my money, I have less left. If I give you the biggest piece of pizza, I have only the smallest piece left. But if I give you some wisdom, I don't lose any. I get wiser. If I give you some love, I am not bereft of love. I'm automatically enriched. If I share some beauty with you, that doesn't make me ugly. Just the opposite. So spiritual goods multiply when shared, whereas physical goods diminish when shared. But since physical goods diminish when shared, anything in physical nature is essentially competitive. And therefore, the superior survives and the inferior doesn't. Now, that's true of biological nature. Is it true of politics? Is it true of states? Well, that depends on whether states have a nature. You see, what I just said about matter, I use the word nature in an ambiguous way. Do I mean by nature simply matter? Or do I mean by nature anything that has a nature, has an essence? Well, since I'm not a nominalist, I believe that there are essences, and therefore things have natures, whether they're made of matter or made of spirit. So I'd like to use the word nature in the broad, old sense of the word. We have a soul. It has a nature. We also have a body. It has a nature. The body is part of material nature. The soul is not. But both have a nature. So if everything has a nature, then a state also has a nature. A state cannot violate this fundamental law that everything that is has a nature. And therefore, this must also apply to the state. Any universal principles will apply to everything. If you're still confused about the word nature, maybe you can replace it by the word species or essence or kind, or simply a set of properties from which flows a set of distinctive actions. Wolves eat rabbits, rabbits don't eat wolves. Why? Because of what wolves are and because of what rabbits are. And maybe we can't define or even understand the essence of rabbithood or wolfhood, but we can certainly observe their distinctive behaviors and say, well, this is what a wolf does, and this is what a rabbit does. All right, since everything has a nature, and therefore the state has a nature too, this principle that everything in nature works by a kind of aristocracy has got to be true of states also. So let's apply it to not just the state in general, but to a democracy. A democracy will work only if the citizens are wise. What is wisdom? Wisdom is discrimination. Wisdom is intellectual aristocracy. Wisdom is choice between a stupid idea and a wise idea, a bad idea and a good idea. In a monarchy, you don't need wise citizens. You just need obedient citizens. In a democracy, you need wise citizens because ideas are not equal. So unless citizens are judgmental, unless citizens discriminate, democracy won't work. Imagine a monarch who treats all his ideas as equal. He'll never make a choice. He'll try to patronize every idea and every policy and be terrified of offending any idea or discriminating against any idea, and he won't do anything. Or he'll do a little bit of everything and therefore nothing. It's intriguing that the words discrimination and judgmentalism are almost always negative in connotation today. There is a proper negative connotation. We shouldn't be judgmental in the sense of being prejudicial against people, and we shouldn't discriminate in an unjust way, but justice means discrimination as well as indiscrimination, because justice means treating unequals unequally, and that's discrimination, as well as treating equals equally, and that's undiscrimination. So to contrast justice with discrimination is to forget half of justice. If you get an A and you get a C and you get an F, and I don't discriminate and I give you all the class average of a C, well, that's good Marxism, but it's not justice. And if we don't discriminate, then we'll be like Eve. We'll buy into the devil's advertisement. We'll be suckers. Advertising, by the way, is the world's oldest profession. It was invented in the Garden of Eden. See this apple? You need this apple. Price one soul. You can do it. At this point, I can't resist the temptation to tell you my favorite lawyer joke. The devil comes into the lawyer's office. He's very rich. The lawyer says, "What can I do for you?" And the devil says, "No, it's what I can do for you. I can make you richer than Bill Gates, more famous than Alan Dershowitz. All you have to do is sign over your soul and the soul of your wife and children and grandchildren and all your descendants down through all the generations." The lawyer narrows his eyes and says, "So what's the catch?"